Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, February 27th. Hard to believe, but we're almost through the month. And welcome to the February edition of the Curriculum Committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. And before I approve the agenda, I would like to make a change on item 2A. It's my personal opinion, and I'll get everybody else's feedback, of course, but since this is a change in curriculum, I'd like to move this to an action item so we can sign off on it and recommend it to the full board. So I would like to propose moving item 2A to make that 3B. DLI update is moved to an action item. Are there any other changes or additions or deletions? If not, I will look forward to a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion, we approve the agenda.
And a second, please. I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Approval of meeting minutes. Are there any changes, deletions to the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve. And that is from the January 30th meeting.
Second.
All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. That will move us to item 3A, Summer Program 2019 to 2020. Is that your baby, Dr. Rita?
Well, it's one of the items that falls under academics, but what I've done is ask Dr. Tyson to come and present. As he is overseeing our accountability program, and this is a part of the accountability program as well as just instructional. As you all know, last year we did the first summer program and retest within the district, and we saw some gains. So Dr. Tyson is going to walk us through sort of the purpose and what we got out of it last year, and then our request to move to the full board for board approval so that we can do it again this year and get signatures from Dr. Houlihan and board chair.
So before Dr. Tyson goes, I just want to make sure we're all clear. We use the word summer program in a lot of things that we do. There's a major difference between a summer reading camp and a summer program and a CTE program. This item is specifically related to summer retesting. EOC, EOG, summer retesting, which is, I think, 1 or 2 days at the end of the school year. So that's what this item is about. It has nothing to do with reading camp or anything else. It's all about retesting.
Great.
And last year was the first year that we did it and saw very good results of it. So just want to make sure that everyone's clear.
Okay.
All right. So in your packet, you received the 2019-20 summer program plan. This is a plan that has to be submitted to the Department of Public Instruction. It has to be signed and submitted by April the 1st for approval. Of course, you see the overview of the purpose. Basically, this is for students who are not proficient when they test at the end of the year. And then they would have the opportunity to come to a remediation session after the end of the school year. I have to be very clear, the remediation that they take part in has to be after the school year has complete. And then they would come back and then they would test. Of course, you see the last day for students is listed there as June 9th. Last day for staff, we have to share that with DPI. I do know that's up in the air depending on the action of the full board with the additional days that were approved at the SBTT committee as a result of the weather. You see the instructional day there would be June the 10th. The number of instruction days that we would allow would be the 1 day. You would bring the kids in, you could remediate them on that day. Then they would come in on the following 2 days and be re-administered the assessments. Of course, I had to list there the arrangements for security of test materials. Anytime we're dealing with anything with Department of Public Instruction, their materials we have to list. That's a statement that I have made that I would submit to the Department of Public Instruction with approval. I do have a few highlights related to the 2019 summer program that I'd like to go through as we prepare just briefly. The grade level proficiency increase after the summer program for all EOGs and EOCs last year was 1.7 percentage points. The reading grade level proficiency, and that would be grades 4 through 8, was 2.0 percentage points. And then the science grade level proficiency increase after the summer program was 1.2 percentage points. If we look at fourth grade reading, we had a 3.3 percentage point increase. Fourth grade reading was a 2.7 percentage point increase. Sixth grade reading, 2.7, seventh, 2.6, and eighth, 2.7. That's all reading. If you look at science grade level proficiency, fifth grade science, 1.8 percentage point increase. Eighth grade science, 0.7 percentage point increase. And then biology at the high school level, 1.2 percentage point increase. If you drill that down slightly further and you look at the schools that had specific gains that really benefited them, you could look at grade level proficiency increases. In the fourth grade with reading, we had 8 schools that had an increase of over 5 percentage points. East Elementary, Poplar, Rock Rest, Rocky River, Sardis, Union, Unionville, and Wingate. In fifth grade ELA, we had 4 schools: Hemby Bridge, Poplar, Porter Ridge, Rock Rest. Sixth grade, 2 schools, the Health Sciences at Monroe Middle and Porter Ridge Middle. And then in 7th and 8th grade ELA with gains of plus 5 percentage points would be Porter Ridge Middle. If you look at the science highlights of the summer program with 5th grade, a plus 5 increase or greater would be Porter Ridge, Prospect, Union, Walter Bickett, and Wesley Chapel. 8th grade, plus 4 percentage points was the Health Sciences Academy at Monroe Middle. And then if you look at the high school level, you had 2 schools that had significant gains in biology, 3.7 percentage points for Parkwood High School, and then 2.5 percentage points at Monroe High School. If you think how that plays into the overall grading of schools, we had several schools that were right on the cut line, A to B, B to C, and C to D. And so if you look at Unionville, they were 86. So their gains potentially helped them. Also, if you look at the schools that were a B at the elementary level, Rock Rest and Rocky River were a 70 on the button. And of course, their gains for summer programming helped in that capacity. Union was exactly the same at 70 with a school performance grade of 70. And then Prospect was a C with a 56. And you understand 55 is the cut line there. So the work that we do for those schools that are close help their proficiency and does make a difference.
I have one quick question. So this is if initial testing is level 1 and level 2. Is there any time for any additional instruction before they retest? It sounds like it's just a matter of, hey, maybe the kid didn't do a good job taking the test. Let's give him another chance. It's not necessarily like the summer reading camp where you're actually working on the material and then retesting. Is that correct?
Well, we do have one instruction day allotted. There has to be an instruction day within this plan per the parameters set forth by DPI, and it has to occur after the end of the academic calendar is over for our school system.
Is this testing also for any students that for any reason, sickness, what have you, missed the initial test? Or
So that would
different?
that would be different. That would be a makeup window.
Okay.
And this is optional.
Yes, it is completely optional. It
Is
would be
transportation provided?
last year. Transportation was provided at the schools.
Okay.
And we
And-
anticipate that this year as well.
Yes. So ask your question again. I'm sorry.
I'm just asking if it was optional.
It is completely optional. One thing that when you notify the parents, they have to be notified that it is an optional opportunity for students.
How many, I know it may be hard to give this number exactly, how many students approximate were we looking at this last year?
So last year we had 2,557 students that retested.
And I do want to be clear, and I know that our school performance directors are here, that when our principals and teachers are messaging this, we did hear some feedback last year about messages that this was required and penalty if you don't show up. That is not true. This is a completely optional. We want to encourage families and students to take advantage of this opportunity, but it is not required. But we do want you to come in. It will benefit the student, it will benefit the school, and it will benefit the teacher if gains are made.
I appreciate you clarifying that because I think there was a little bit of scuttle around it that was the case. And I'm glad I didn't think it was, but things started in a hurry with that. So
Did you say how many took advantage of this last year?
Last year, we re-administered 2,557 assessments after the school year was over.
Do you know what percentage that is of students that actually qualified, chose to take the retest? Like 75% of them did, or do you know what that?
I don't
Might be.
have that figure, no, sir.
Okay. I would just be curious as to how many are taking advantage of this. Obviously, 2,000 is a good many, but we're looking at what? Well, it includes high school, so I don't know how many take those classes, but I would think there would be probably.
Well, we originally administered 32,660 exams.
In those particular areas.
Yes.
Okay. So if those numbers hold true, you're looking at, well,
Well, it'd be based off the percentage
Who
of
get
students
those
who
one
didn't
and
pass
twos?
at a 3,
Yeah.
4, and 5. So we'd have to do some calculation on that.
and how do we communicate with parents that this is available?
So last year we had a letter, as well as many schools made personal phone calls. The difficulty is the tight window there at the end of the school year. You have a tight turnaround from when they get the initial results back, and then we push that out to the parents so we can get the kids back in as soon as possible.
Right.
Are there any subjects that testing will not or retesting will not be available for this year?
Yes, ELA, because it is a year where we are renorming the ELA, much like the math last year. Those scores will be delayed through the summer to the fall, so that will not be an option.
So with math last year, of course, this wasn't an option. We didn't have to
It
test
was-
back till.
that-
back.
That is correct.
Okay. So the numbers may have been higher. Had that, it would have been higher, obviously.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions? Candace or Tina?
No.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval to the full board.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion, need a second. I'll second. All in favor of approval, recommending approval to the full board, say aye. Aye. It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tyson. I will move on to item number 3B, DLI update.
Just as we've done in the past with our dual language immersion program, we'd like to give annual updates about where we are and future program planning. And so overseeing that program is Miss Jessica Garner, and she is here with us today to kind of take us through her presentation on DLI.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm excited to bring to you just some updates on our programming and how things are going, and also have some conversations about middle school. We continue to have more schools with immersion than any other district in North Carolina. Our teachers are attending monthly professional development sessions after school so that they can become more familiar with our curriculum. And we're just continuing to build consistency across our programs with that. We're going to be hosting a visit from the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina, an administrator visit on March 6th at Shiloh Valley. And there will also be some folks that are involved. In the administrator certification at East Carolina coming to visit as well. So this is a breakdown of our current reality, our 17 schools with immersion programs. As you can see, we have a couple of different models, and I just want to remind you that the one-way immersion refers to the native language of the students in the program. The majority of those students are native English speakers learning either Spanish or Mandarin for the first time.
Right.
And in our two-way immersion programs, those are students where we have about 50% of the students that are native Spanish speakers and about 50% are native English speakers, and they each learn the other language along with learning their own as well. Okay, so this slide shows you the each of our schools and the highest grade that they have with immersion. So you can see that we just started Porter Ridge and Wingate this year. They have kindergarten. Marshville is in their second year. Those students are up through first grade, and East and Walter Bickett are up through second grade. The bulk of our schools are up through fifth grade. And I have a little star beside Shiloh Valley. I did mention that we have 17 programs, but you'll only see 16 on this slide. Shiloh Valley I just lump them together because they kind of operate as one program, even though they're technically two schools. And then we currently have middle school programs at Piedmont in 6th grade for the first time this year, and then Sun Valley and Marvin Ridge. I do want to note that we are not proposing the expansion of any programs for next year with elementary schools. So let's talk a little bit about middle school. Currently, this is what we have going on. We have Marvin Elementary and Kensington feeding into Marvin Ridge Middle School. We have Shiloh Valley Primary and Elementary feeding into Sun Valley Middle. And we have Unionville feeding into Piedmont. And then next year, we have Antioch, Weddington, Western Union, and Poplar going to middle school. And so we're proposing that they go to their traditional feeder schools. And so I want to talk a little bit about some shifts to make this proposal feasible. So what we have, if you look on the next slide, at Marvin Ridge Middle School, we're teaching science and social studies. Those students are up through 7th grade. So they get science and social studies in Mandarin. At Sun Valley, they're piloting science and language arts, where they have a day of Spanish language arts, a day of English language arts, and they're also getting science in Spanish. And then at Piedmont Middle School, they're also getting science and social studies.
And I want to be clear of the reason why we've made this attempt. If you'll remember, back when a couple of years ago, when our middle school model was just beginning, we were pretty clear that we, after 6 years of dual language immersion in elementary school, it would do you no good to take Spanish or Mandarin as an elective class in terms of Spanish. You know, my daughter in 6th grade, she has on the middle school wheel, she has 6 weeks of Spanish, then she'll have 6 weeks of Chinese, then she'll have 6 weeks of French. Well, after going through 6 years of a DLI program, that would be a complete waste. So our thought was, let's put our students in content areas, science, social studies, language arts, etc., so that you're increasing vocabulary, you're focusing on the academic language and academic content. And as Ms. Gardner will tell you in a minute, we've learned a lot about that approach, and are actually going to be proposing to make a change to that model because of some challenges that we're having. So I just wanted to let you know the reason why we went in this direction and why you don't see our DLI students just taking a traditional elective course of language. So
Thank you. So as Dr. Houlihan mentioned, we've had some challenges with this model. We are the first middle school in the state to have Mandarin immersion. So, you know, we were kind of the pioneers. There aren't a lot of other models out there to take a look at, specifically in North Carolina. And there aren't a lot, even in Spanish, that are up through middle and high school. So we've had specific challenges with this model around licensure of our teachers. So in order for a teacher to have a high enough proficiency level to get their visa to come here, usually that means they've been teaching English in their home country, and typically they've been teaching that in an elementary setting. So what happens is those teachers that have had that high level of English proficiency, very, very rarely do they also have a licensure in 612 science or social studies. And we've kind of called it the purple unicorn to find one person that's licensed in both science and social studies from another country that has a high enough proficiency level to get here. So that has been our biggest challenge. And you know, one of the other pieces that we were trying to do with this model, if you take a look at what our current model is, we were trying really to bridge what we have in elementary school, which is truly a content-based model where our students are learning content. They're learning science and math and language arts for the first time, but they're learning it through another language. That's kind of the definition of traditional immersion. But what happens when they get to high school, we've got a very articulated sequence where they're just going to jump into our language classes, right? Spanish 3, Spanish 4, AP Spanish. And so part of the goal of this middle school program originally with going with content in 6th and 7th grade was to make that transition between content over to language. But as we've kind of mentioned, the licensure been challenging. The staffing, just finding people who could do that. The content in science and social studies in middle school also gets significantly more difficult. And so, you know, you've got a semester to teach science and a semester to teach social studies, whether you do that A day, B day, like some of our middle schools do, or a semester. And the depth that they have to go into with those standards, it's challenging to teach the vocabulary in both languages, to teach the concepts that are brand new concepts, you know, in both languages. It just gets harder the deeper you go into those grade levels. So that's been a challenge. And finding resources for these classrooms. It's finding social studies resources in Chinese that come from the American lens is challenging. So what we're proposing is that we switch this and that we move to essentially a similar track that is going to be elective based, but it is not the traditional 6th and 7th grade wheel that you have seen in the past. So we are proposing that students in 6th and 7th grade would split the dual and heritage speaker level 1 course, which is a high school credit course. They would split it over 2 years to kind of slow that content down to make sure that we fill gaps in grammar and syntax and some of the other language structures. And then we're keeping our 8th grade model the way that we have proposed it from the beginning, that they will take dual and heritage speaker level 2 as a high school credit course in 8th grade. So what are the implications of this?
I was going to ask, question, when you take dual and heritage speaker 1A and 1B, I'm assuming obviously those are both year-long courses, correct?
They are, but they're shortened because they're during that elective time.
Correct. And then secondly, when you pass the class of 1A in 6th grade and you pass the class in 1B, does that equal 1 high school credit?
Yes. There's no required assessment that you have to take to get the credit. It's very much like taking English 1 or Math 1 in middle school. If you take the class, you pass the class, you get the credit.
And then,
it doesn't affect your GPA.
Okay. And then dual heritage speaker 2 is also 1 credit.
Correct.
So you could have potentially anyone taking these courses could get out of middle school with 2 foreign language credits.
If they do this full sequence, they will come out of middle school with 2 foreign language credits, which satisfies the UNC system requirement to have 2 credits. Obviously, we don't want our students to stop after middle school. We want them to continue on, but it would provide that opportunity for them. If they wanted to switch to a different language, if they, chose to do something else, they could continue on with that. So
from a curriculum standpoint, are the dual and heritage speaker classes, do you have to be specifically a dual language immersion student to take that course, or could other students, I'm thinking about your ESL population or your ELL, across all of our middle schools, that is a growing population, even though they may not have been in a DLI program, could they take these elective courses as well?
yeah, so that's part of the design of this that I think will make it feasible. We have pretty small numbers of students coming out of Poplin and Western Union. But because if you look at the name of the course, DPI has created these courses, dual, meaning dual language students, and heritage, meaning heritage language speakers. Together, it's the same content, the same standards. This would be appropriate for any of our students that come in with some literacy in the language. It would not be appropriate for students that have maybe had a little bit of Spanish at home. They've spoken a little bit of Spanish at home with mom and dad, and they want to jump in. They would be lost because of the level of literacy. But our ESL students in particular, because they have typically had some kind of education in that other language. If you're still involved with our ESL program in middle school, that means you've had some kind of education in Spanish. And so what that does for us is, even when we have those small classes coming out of immersion, it allows us to combine and to fill these classes and make sure that we would have enough that it wouldn't negatively impact the other related arts classes from a class size perspective. I think it would also give those kids, the ESL kids, a class where they could learn about their own culture. They could increase their literacy so that they could also become biliterate and bicultural. It would be a great opportunity for our immersion students to share their language with native speakers and share their culture with native speakers. And I think it could be a confidence boost for some of our ESL students. They will feel confident in that class because it's a class where they can excel and not have the language hold them back. So I'm excited about the idea of combining this truly into a dual and heritage speaker course. It would also provide those students with an opportunity to get high school credit in middle school. And typically, if your English level is not high enough, if you're in our ESL program, you're going to have a hard time taking advantage of the other opportunities that we have to take high school courses in middle school. So the one challenge of this is it's very similar to our students who choose to take band. If you choose this immersion path, that is going to be your chosen elective. So you would not get the wheel. Okay, they would have to choose to say, I want immersion, and it very similar to how the band students choose. And they would also have to choose between the immersion program and the band program at this point. So that's the biggest challenge. I do think that when parents put their kids in immersion, that is a program that they are choosing. It is a special program, and we struggle to find ways to accommodate people to participate in multiple programs, as there's just so many hours in the day. So, they could choose at the end of 5th grade, if they really wanted to do band, they could choose to go that route. And then when they get to high school, they can come back into the language sequence, and we can figure out exactly where they would fit with that. So it would be an option because you have more spaces for electives when you get to high school. The other piece of this is, when we look at current enrollment, current teachers, we have teachers in place at all of these middle schools currently that could teach this. The curriculum and the resources are available. So that is not a concern the way that it currently is with science and social
In other
studies.
words, we are not adding additional teachers to middle schools to do this. We're using
Right.
existing staff, so there is no additional cost.
And the other benefit is students get to go to their feeder middle school. They get to stay with their friends. They get to stay in their neighborhood. They can ride their neighborhood buses to the schools. And it just provides a nice pattern of consistency for those students. And so if you look at how does this feed into the high school program, it doesn't shift our high school model. The high school model was either honors Chinese 3 or 4, depending on the student's proficiency level. Then they would take AP Chinese, and then when they get into the 11th grade, they would take these IB courses. And we're still trying to figure out if they're going to do the language A, literature in Chinese course, or if they're going to do the IB language B. So those are conversations that as the students kind of come through, we'll gauge their proficiency level. And on the Spanish side, it looks similar, but the College Board offers an additional AP Spanish course. And so they would take Honors Spanish 3 or 4 in 9th grade, AP Spanish Language and Culture in 10th, AP Spanish Literature and Culture in 11th. And then I've had conversations with a couple of our partners to try to figure out some type of continuation for those students beyond the AP Spanish Literature. I was also talking to the principal of South Mecklenburg High School. They have the immersion continuation all the way through the high school and kind of looking at what they do. And they've also struggled with what you do after AP Spanish Literature. So we're all kind of in this together. We may see what they do and, take some cues from that. So this is our proposal. Let me know if you have any questions. I will say that informally, throughout the first 2 years of this middle school program, we have had a ton of parent feedback that they would prefer the model that we're proposing today. The parents in general have not loved the science and social studies in middle school. They've been asking for this. So I think that from the parent perspective, we've heard it loudly and clearly that they would prefer a language-based course in middle school.
I think that's a good lesson to learn in continuous improvement. When you try something, you hope it works. If it doesn't, if you're not getting the results you get, you try to make shifts and figure out how to make it better. And I think that's kind of the message here. So
I think that our teachers that are teaching this as well, they've struggled with resources and planning, being part of the 6th and 7th grade level team meetings, trying to be part of that. And then, multiple grades and content areas. It's been a challenge. I think it will be a welcome change for our teachers and maybe take the stress load off of our teachers a little bit as well, because it's teaching something that they're comfortable with.
All
I
right.
do have a question. So
Please.
this program,
Please go ahead, Candace.
I do have a question. So this program is not offered within our health science program, like within Monroe.
It will be eventually, but when students from East Elementary and Walter Bickett, which is where you have dual language immersion, once they transition into Health Sciences Academy at Monroe, it will be an option. Same with your Wingate University in Marshville. When those students end up transitioning into East Union, it would be available then. Correct.
You said university.
Oh, sorry, Wingate Elementary. Today's books and brackets kick off. I've got Wingate University on my mind. Sorry.
Okay, I was wondering what did you mean by that? But okay,
I bet that did catch your attention, didn't it?
Yeah, the reason that we've just got those schools listed is, but those are the students that will be going next year. And then we've got Monroe and East Union coming on later. Those students are only up through the highest grade is 2nd grade right now.
Currently, we do offer dual language and heritage at the high school level for freshmen, usually freshmen and sophomore students that go through that to get those credits. So when those dual language immersion students move up through into the middle school, we'll be able to offer that at an earlier level for those students.
Okay. And I did ask that question because many of the students that do study health science, they will be working with the Spanish population.
That's a very good point.
Or,
Yeah.
I hope they're prepared. I want them to be prepared, rather.
Absolutely. I think that'd be a great skill.
I think it would be a really nice fit for those students. And you know, right now, medical Spanish is what's offered there. So we would have to look and see, is it more appropriate that this course, it could be the same course, takes on a health sciences focus as you look at the curriculum. Right now, the curriculum that we're looking at is focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which lends itself wonderfully to the health sciences fields, looking at clean water and, you know, health safety and lots of those different pieces with nutrition. And so I think it would lend itself, and you wouldn't have to necessarily teach a different course. It's the same, it could be the same course with just a different lens that you look at it through. So that's a great point.
I'm
Thank
excited
you.
about it. I, you know, testing, everything is positive about this, you know, but there's been some concern around about cuts to this program. And I just want to say that that's not going to happen. I mean, the success is there and we're going to support this program. And I love the expansion of it, how the new schools are getting involved and the last time we saw down the road and how this is going to grow from there. And it's a great program.
I'm glad you said that, Mr. Kiker. We are not proposing any cuts at the current time. We understand that our dual language immersion program is one of the best in the state, and a lot of families move here for that program. And I say I kick myself all the time that I did not put my own children through a dual language immersion program. There are just so many benefits from it. But no, to your point, we are not proposing any cuts.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I thought for a change I'd go last instead of first. One of the concerns I have is in the model, in the current middle school model, we have two middle schools that only have one elementary feeder for the program. And that being said, I think we're going to have to look at some type of cutoff enrollment. And if the program starts falling below that, let's say in fifth grade, then we might have to give the parents choice to combine with another program. I think, and here's the reason why. It doesn't have a cost, but it does take up a teacher allotment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's the best thing that if we have a dual language or a DLI class that has 13 students, and that causes another fifth grade class to have 30. So we have to be careful that there's needs to be a cutoff point where if enrollment and through the middle school as well, if enrollment drops, we're going to have to consolidate because we can't, especially in this day and time, use up our teacher allotment for the program, and then our mainstream classes are larger than we would like. That's one of my concerns. So I think we should also on this program focus that each proposed middle school has at least, we build, and I know we don't want to force this down everybody's throat, but I think each middle school program needs to have at least 2 feeder elementary schools to maintain the integrity of the population in the program.
That is a primary goal that we have within every cluster. And I think what you're getting to is it's a matter of time. We have so many different elementary schools coming into middle schools at different times. As an example, Porter Ridge Elementary School is in kindergarten right now. They'll be in first grade. Poplin is in fifth grade. So eventually Porter Ridge Middle School will have 2 elementary schools feeding it. We only have one cluster currently where there's one elementary school feeding the middle, and that's Parkwood. And so identifying would a Waxhaw or a Prospect ever want to come on board. So Mr. Sides, your point's well taken. We're monitoring the enrollment piece, but I want to assure you that over time, you're going to eventually see, like next year, you've got Antioch and Weddington feeding Weddington Middle School. So it's going to get there. It's just going to take some time.
Is there another elementary school in the Piedmont cluster that will eventually feed into Piedmont Middle?
Porter Ridge will be split. It'll be
Oh,
split between,
okay.
yeah. And the other piece with that is that to me is why the middle school model of including our ESL students. So we've got a small group coming from Poplar, but there are 40 currently in our 5th grade feeders that come into Porter Ridge Middle School, 40 ESL students going to Porter Ridge Middle School 6th grade next year. So, some of those students would absolutely be able to pair with the small class coming from Poplin. To your point in elementary school, we've combined some classes this year. So we have 2 elementary schools where there's a 4th and 5th grade combined within DLI. And we've used different staffing when they've got different breaks so that those students aren't getting instruction at the 4th and 5th graders aren't being instructed at the same time. But we have, combo classes happen sometimes even outside of immersion. And we've done that in immersion as well for that very reason, so that the other classrooms don't suffer.
And I think maybe this is something that someday we can figure out. You got to get in the program at kindergarten or you're locked out all through elementary until you get into middle school and decide to take electives or high school. If you don't catch this in kindergarten, you don't have an entry point in later grades. So somebody transfers in unless they were involved in a program at their previous school. They come in at 2nd grade. Oh man, love to be a part of this program. Sorry, you're 2 years behind. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just, wondering if somehow we can figure out onboarding at not just kindergarten, that you could get in. Maybe it's only 1st grade. Maybe they're not too far ahead in 1st grade, so you have an option maybe there. And I know then you're talking about if you're going to need another teacher, if the population comes too big or anything. But I would just love to have parents have another onboarding option besides just kindergarten.
Well, and I think, the state has recognized that as well. So we get a waiver from the kindergarten class size. We do put more students in our immersion classrooms than in our traditional classrooms because we know there's some of that attrition. And I will tell you, I think as our programs get more and more recognition across the state, we do get people moving here. So we're keeping a list. We will do late entry assessments the first week of June. Pretty much every day after school, we will be conducting late entry assessments for folks that either moved here late, and didn't know about it, and they speak Spanish at home, or they've been getting Spanish outside of school to try to catch up and try to get there. So we do conduct a lot of late entry assessments, and typically the students that we place have been successful. And, we just want to make sure that we put the students in there that it's going to be a positive situation for the student and for the teacher and for the class. But we do it all the time. We have a whole spreadsheet with all the requests that we get for folks that want to come, that are moving here from immersion, from another country, have language at home. So that is a real thing, and we do it as often as possible. I love the idea of potentially looking at K1. I do think that the teacher issue, is something we'd have to look at, because typically our 1st grade classrooms don't have openings in them, unfortunately. And I will say too, the first year of a program, so you look at the small class at Western Union, the small class at Poplin, that is only true of that very first group, because it's the first group of parents that kind of took that plunge, took that risk, couldn't see it, but said, I'm going to step out in faith anyway. When you look at the K4 in those same buildings, you don't have the small class sizes. Okay. Yeah.
You had mentioned before that you have been combining some classes. Is there an informal cutoff number? If the class, the cohort looks like it's falling below a certain number, then we know we're going to have to combine?
It's really up to the site-based administrator to look at their overall staffing and what those numbers are.
You're leaving that to each.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The other question I have is, and I don't know what the number is of how many students have been able to change schools to be involved in the program, but as a policy, if they get involved in they transfer in, they get involved in the program, and let's say in 3rd grade, they decide to drop out. Are they required to return to their home school? Are they allowed to stay?
No, they have to return to their home school at the end of that school year.
At the end of that school year that they drop out. They say, at the end of the year, they say, look, I'm not coming back or the parents say, I'm not coming back to this program for the next grade. Okay, well, you got to go back where you came from. Okay.
Correct.
And we are working to make sure that is very clear in policy.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval, discussion and approval to the full board.
I make a motion.
Do I have a second? I think that was Tina. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think that brings us to 4A, items to be taken to the full board, which is our items 3A and 3B. All right. Our next meeting date will be March 26. Oh boy, right before spring break. All right. Any other business to come before the committee? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.